Story 1. You seem stuck on the idea that there has to be a border, but that idea comes from the fact that everything you normally encounter has a border. Empty space is not a thing. It has no border, grid, fabric, ether, or substance. It is the absence of anything. It makes no sense to talk about its edge. That is like holding 0 apples and trying to find the edge of an apple. If you need an analogy, imagine opening a drawing app to an empty canvas. You can pinch to zoom and swipe to move the canvas. You can keep swiping sideways and there is no edge like a Word document. The canvas just extends as you swipe. Unless you draw, all that space is merely potential. When you draw, the drawing gets an edge. The same goes for numbers. You can keep counting forever. There is no limit. At some point numbers become uselessly large because nothing requires them except the ability to imagine them. Is the largest useful number the edge of counting? No. Counting extends to infinity. We do not know whether the universe is finite or infinite. It could continue indefinitely like numbers, or it could have a farthest object. If the latter is true, that would be the furthest region useful to discuss. Space beyond it would be more space like a blank canvas. Story 2. The best quote I have heard about questions like this is, "The universe is under no obligation to make sense to us." Story 3. I wonder when the simulation runs out of memory. Will that end the expansion? Story 4. It is not expanding into anything or anywhere that we can know of. Space itself is getting bigger. Story 5. It is not expanding into anything. Rather, the distances between objects are increasing. A rubber band is a useful analogy in some ways but not in others. Physical reality is a manifestation of how things interact, not the underlying substrate. It is like a simulation in that the apparent reality differs from the deeper description, but that does not imply someone is running a simulation. Many entities do not interact and can pass through each other undetected. What we observe are the interactions that affect us, similar to a signal traveling along wires. From the signal alone we cannot infer the nature of the wires. Space itself is stretching, but if space is infinite, it does not need to expand into anything because it already extends everywhere. Infinity behaves in non-intuitive ways. Alternatively, you can think of it like changing a variable in a simulation. There is no external space for things to expand into. Story 6. I am not an expert, but as far as I know, the Big Bang has given the wrong impression that space expanded from a single point like an explosion. That is not true. Space is expanding in every direction from everywhere. Do not think of it as a balloon being blown up. Instead, imagine an already infinite universe in which space was once much denser, with distances between points much smaller. Just as there is likely no edge in any direction now, there was likely no edge then. Space was simply closer together. Story 7. It is not expanding into anything. Space itself is stretching. There is no outside. The universe does not have an edge. It is more like the surface of an inflating balloon, where all points move away from each other. Story 8. Think about space like time. Time is always getting bigger. It expands into the future, but for some reason my brain is much more comfortable with that than with space doing the same. Story 9. The rest of the giant outside the eye in which our multiverse resides. Story 10. The observable universe is expanding. We can't really know what is beyond it, if anything. As far as we know, there is no wall where it could end. Story 11. The universe is, as far as we know, infinite in size. It has been infinite since the beginning and will remain infinite. However, the distances between objects within it are increasing. Story 12. I feel that if the idea is that it is growing, that implies there is an edge that is expanding. If it is expanding, what would a person see, touch, or otherwise perceive if they stood at the edge as it expanded? I doubt we will ever know, but perhaps it is something crazy like an Ouroboros inverted on itself. The other theory is that it is truly endless and not necessarily expanding. If endless implies infinity, then there are infinite possibilities, which would mean everything has already happened. Story 13. The universe is not expanding into anything. It is simply creating more space as it grows. Story 14. The only way I can think about this without going insane is along the lines of the infinite hotel paradox. If you do not know about it, definitely search for it on Google and YouTube. It is interesting to think of infinities that are larger than others. The same idea can be applied to space, I think. You create space, but it already exists because it is infinite in a way. It is mind-boggling even to write, but it makes sense to me and brings me comfort in this unknown. I laugh out loud. Story 15. It's easier to imagine in 2 dimensions rather than 3 dimensions. Think about blowing up a balloon and you are a dot on its surface. The surface grows as you blow it up, but there is no edge to the 2-dimensional surface. It is not growing into anything you can experience. In my example, it is growing into another dimension, but from the 2-dimensional perspective there is no outside. The space is just getting bigger. Edit, wrong subreddit, this is the explain like I'm 5 answer. Story 16. So does that mean if you could keep up with the expanding space you could see the nothing or whatever space is expanding into? Story 17. It is not expanding into anything. New space is created everywhere. There is no border or moving wall. It may already be infinitely large and still expand, or it may have a finite periodic size and expand without requiring an outside. Story 18. The universe could be both expanding and infinite. Objects are moving farther apart, and galaxies move away from one another. Story 19. It is not expanding into something. Instead, imagine a deflated balloon that you then blow up. Imagine the universe is the rubber surface of the balloon, not the interior. Glue small coins to the rubber surface to represent galaxies. As you blow up the balloon, all the coins move farther away from each other. Coins that started farther apart separate faster than coins that started close together. The coins themselves do not increase in size as the balloon stretches. Only the distances between them increase. So space between galaxies grows because space itself is stretching, not because the universe is expanding into a pre-existing space or because galaxies are expanding. This is our current understanding of the expanding universe. Story 20. The creepy thing is that even the space between atoms is increasing. Eventually, everything will be too far apart and will cease to exist. Story 21. An astronomy teacher told us that the universe is expanding while also creating the space into which it expands. Story 22. It is not expanding. It is inflating. The distances between points remain the same because the measurement units are expanding too. Story 23. Assume eternal inflation is an accurate description. Our universe is a bubble of true vacuum that nucleated in an inflating space. The bubble walls expand at the speed of light, and outside the bubble is an inflating false vacuum where other bubble universes nucleate eternally. Observers inside the bubble see an infinite, expanding space because space-time is foliated. Infinite spatial surfaces are nested within the future light cone of the bubble nucleation event. The bubble wall cannot be reached because it is effectively in the past. From the interior viewpoint, we inhabit an infinite, expanding space. From the inflationary region, one would see a finite bubble whose walls expand at the speed of light. Story 24. Space is everything beyond Earth, including the regions between galaxy groups. Those groups are moving away from one another, and there is no observable boundary. Story 25. If you think of the universe as a balloon and you ask what is outside it, the answer is that we do not know. Story 26. Think of it like computer rendering. Areas of a Minecraft map do not exist until you reach a certain point, and then more is generated. This is the basis of simulation theory. The universe exists because the cosmic equivalent of a system developer wrote a set of rules and hit generate. Our laws of physics are us scratching the surface of that code. A more likely explanation is that our perceptions cannot determine what existence really is. All our observations of the universe could be wrong because our ways of observing only reveal the back of a mask, while the actual function or purpose of existence may be visible to entities that perceive the front of the mask. This ignores that words such as beings, entities, and existence are conceded and presume that sentient life is the most valid form of being. Story 27. Neil deGrasse Tyson does a decent job explaining what nothing is and expanding on it. Story 28. Space is expanding. The planets and galaxies are moving farther away from the starting point. Our ability to see more of space is also expanding. This is just my ignorant opinion, and I could be wrong. Story 29. If you travel hundreds of light years, space will still be infinite in all directions. Story 30. That's far beyond our comprehension. The only one who knows the answer is the idiot redneck who is visited by aliens all the time. Story 31. However fast light may brag about traveling, as soon as it gets there, it has to admit the darkness was there first. Story 32. Now to make matters worse, she claims the universe is expanding like a balloon. But baby, if it is meant to be infinite, then where is it expanding to? The Divine Comedy. Story 33. See, you have the monkey brain. Your species evolved in situations where you needed to intuit certain things quickly. Where the best fruit on the tree was how long you had to escape if you saw a predator some distance away, how long it takes to walk to the watering hole. You are very good at those things. Even if not directly pre-programmed, you are predisposed to learn that information quickly. The trouble is we no longer live in that ecological niche. The way your brain evolved has almost nothing to do with modern circumstances. Evolution has not caught up, and that leads to problems because the way things behave on the normal Newtonian scale is not how they behave at much larger or much smaller scales. Your intuition about behavior, distances, and three-dimensional mechanics is useless beyond the Newtonian scale. It is natural to ask what medium the universe expands into. That is how mechanics works on the human scale. The problem is that the universe is not expanding into anything. Whether you have thought about it consciously or not, your question assumes there is an inside and an outside of the universe. There is no outside. The Big Bang was the creation of dimension and of space-time. We exist within a bubble of physical reality, but there are no other somethings surrounding it. There is nothing beyond. That is worse than nothing, because even nothing implies an absence within space, and there is no space in which nothing could be replaced with something. There is no outside. If that unsettles you, wait until you realize there was no before the Big Bang either. The universe is under no obligation to make sense. It may have an explanation, but the hard reality is that you live in an absurd reality. Most answers to the big questions are unintuitive and offer little actionable information. You will have to make your peace with that. Story 34. This is one of those questions that science is still investigating, but I can explain how cosmologists currently understand it. When we say that the universe is expanding, we mean that space itself is expanding. The distances between galaxies are increasing, not that galaxies are traveling into a void outside. It is not that the universe is a balloon expanding into pre-existing space. A more accurate description is that the universe is like the surface of a balloon. The space itself expands, so distances on that surface increase. There is no space or time outside the universe. When we talk about outside the universe, we use concepts that physics does not define, because space and time as we know them do not exist there. Some scientists propose a multiverse, where other universes might have their own space and time, but this is a hypothesis, not a proven fact. The universe expands into itself, not into something else. Story 35. Truly pure nothing. Completely dark, with no oxygen and no gravity. You couldn't even be said to die there. Even iron wouldn't rust because of the absence of oxygen and other elements. Story 36. Space is not expanding into anything. It is not that the universe is a giant ball of space growing larger in a void. Galaxies are moving apart, making the known universe appear larger. Story 37. My understanding is that it is not expanding in the sense of growing. Rather, it is stretching, that is, the distances between objects are increasing. Story 38. Space is a concept that expands into the tragic desire to achieve infinity. Story 39. It is a good question, and I find it fascinating that recent research suggests the edge of the known universe has properties similar to the edge of an event horizon. Story 40. It doesn't need to have an end. When we say it is expanding, we mean the greatest distance between any two pieces of matter is increasing. There is always more nothing outside the existing matter. Story 41. Distance is not a thing. It is a measurement. Space is expanding into nothing. There is nothing there. Nothing is not something. There was nothing, and now there is something. There is nothing beyond that until there is. Story 42. Space is just there. The universe is the physical matter that exploded in the Big Bang and formed all the stars, rocks, and planets. At least that's what I thought I saw in documentaries and books. Story 43. Expansion is the same as becoming bigger only for things with finite size. Expansion means that, as time passes, the distance between two immobile objects becomes larger. If you stand 1 meter from your friend and both remain perfectly still, after a bit of time the distance may be 2 meters. Story 44. It's like asking, what is north of the North Pole? Once you are at the North Pole, the concept of north ceases to apply. Similarly, for the universe as a whole, the idea of an outside or beyond does not apply. This is what cosmologists call the metric expansion of space. It means the ruler you use to measure distance is stretching. The distance between galaxies is increasing not just because they are moving, but because the space-time between them is expanding. Story 45. I imagine it is like a puddle of water on the floor that has more water added, so the puddle gets bigger. I am probably wrong, but that is how I picture it. Story 46. The region beyond the universe is often considered infinite nothingness, and the space of the universe within it simply stretches with no limit. Story 47. More space. Isn't it? The universe is a single vast fractal, so infinitely complicated that if you were exposed to its true nature, you would develop severe post-traumatic stress disorder and lose your trust in reality. Story 48. It's wrong to think of the universe as a slowly inflating balloon. There is no visible edge. It is more like an apparently infinite, nearly uniform cloud whose individual parts, whole galaxies, are all moving farther apart in every direction. Like a mist or fog that becomes less dense over time, a cloud of water droplets may seem to have an edge at low resolution, but when you zoom in, it does not. Story 49. The expansion is more like inflation in the financial sense. The price of a gallon of milk has risen, but its value to you has not. You want a gallon of milk just as much as before, but the price you must pay has increased. Imagine a chessboard with only pawns. The speed of light is 1 square per turn. Very slowly, the grid is actually shrinking. There are more squares on the board. The pieces have not moved, but it takes more turns to get from point A to point B. The distance measured in how long it takes light to get somewhere, also known as light years or other light-time units, is increasing. This is expansion, but the board has not grown larger and does not need to expand into anything. There are simply more squares on the board. In our reference frame, the grid appears to shrink because the board has not grown larger. You are simply drawing a tighter grid of squares. Story 50. Maybe it is a kind of event horizon. Who knows, since space-time does not exist yet beyond that threshold. Story 51. I think of it as a balloon. What is the balloon expanding into as you blow it up? Story 52. What if space itself is the force that gives everything gravity? Story 53. I think even if we knew, our brains could not comprehend that level of nothingness. Story 54. I once asked this question on a forum and was told it is essentially paradoxical. The sum total of all that exists, not just physical objects like planets and stars, but the laws of physics, space, time, and so on, is contained within our universe. Nothing we can understand or perceive can exist outside it, so it is essentially a closed system. There might be higher dimensions it resides in, but with current understanding and technology we have no way to verify that, so we must assume the universe is all there is until evidence suggests otherwise. The universe does not expand from a central point. Its expansion is not like ripples from a stone in a lake. It is more like drawing dots on a balloon, then inflating the balloon and watching the dots move away from each other. There is no central dot from which the others expand. The idea that the universe might be infinite is difficult to grasp. We tend to imagine a universe containing a very large number of planets, like trillions, but if the universe is infinite, those numbers would be negligible. True infinity has no end, so no number can describe it. An infinite universe also implies an infinite number of permutations of events, still constrained by physical laws. That leads to strange conclusions. In an infinite universe, there could be another person who looks like me with my name on a planet like Earth writing the same sentence, and another version of you reading it. There would be countless such repetitions because of endless permutations. It is hard for us to grasp. The more I think about it, the more I suspect the universe might be a simulation. Infinite vastness makes the purpose of it all seem puzzling, while a simulation could be engineered to present an unbounded environment, like an extremely advanced video game whose engine generates more landscape as the character moves into empty space. Story 55. Let's all achieve world peace, focus on sustainability, and live long enough to find out. Oh yeah, I forgot we do not care. Story 56. We do not know. Even at a fundamental level, it is difficult to define. It is not space that is expanding into something. Space itself is expanding. Whatever that something is, it remains currently undefinable and unimaginable, and despite our best theories, no one truly knows. Story 57. I am still trying to comprehend how we can now see things as they were millions of years ago. Story 58. Everyone I ask this question to says they do not understand, but I find it very easy to understand. Story 59. My theory is that it expands on nothing, not pitch black. It's like losing your sight. You don't see black. You see nothing. You can understand nothing by closing one eye and noticing what you see. Story 60. Isn't it just momentum from the Big Bang carrying matter outward? Does the universe's life cycle last trillions of years until it shrinks again into another Big Bang? Story 61. I do not think space is expanding. I believe everything within it is moving farther apart. For example, the moon is slowly moving away from Earth. Either way, I like the Futurama idea of there simply being a white wall. Story 62. Goddamn man, we made it to the moon 56 years ago. Beyond that, what have we done? I do not see anything in this lifetime. Story 63. How about this? What does it matter? The universe exists within our reality. In that reality, everything must be born, grow, and die. Even though it is immensely large, it is not immune to what I call the equilibrium engine. Anything beyond that reality is, by definition, outside our experience. It is basically impossible for us to understand. As impressive as our science is, it is still based on the rules here, not there. Our science does not work outside of it. It barely works for black holes and dark matter. Story 64. Space is not expanding. Space may be infinite. All the physical objects that make up galaxies and solar systems, including planets, asteroids, and stars, are collectively moving outward. According to the Big Bang Theory, space was all-encompassing even when the universe was contained in an infinitesimal point. Something triggered the Big Bang, sending matter outward. It is possible that gravity will eventually pull matter back toward a central region, compressing it into an infinitesimal point and repeating the process. Story 65. It could be soup. I am not an expert. Could also be nothing. I am going with soup for now. Prove me wrong. Story 66. Some alien out there is reading this thread, laughing that we do not know about the giant space ice wall. Story 67. Serious answer. Imagine a balloon with polka dots on it. The dots are close together when the balloon is deflated. Now fill the balloon with air or dark energy. As you inflate it, the polka dots move farther apart from each other. This is a similar effect with added complexities. What is the balloon expanding into? Why are the polka dots moving farther apart? Story 68. People keep saying space is infinite, yet it keeps expanding. Wouldn't that, by definition, make space finite? Story 69. There is more matter outside the universe that it is assimilating to make it larger. Story 70. The universe is expanding into itself. When it reaches the end, millions of black holes will merge like raindrops forming a puddle. It will reverse, implode, and then explode. Everything will start again, repeating these steps. Space beyond space is a plane of existence void of time. If motion and space make time, then whatever is outside is meta. There is a story attributed to Thoth of Egypt that he reached the universe's limit, went beyond the universe, and described demonic astral dogs waiting for souls departing the universal egg, trying to eat those who transcend that layer. Story 71. Not related, but I was watching the dishwater drain the other night and observed patches of bubbles swirling and reacting with each other before being sucked down the plug hole. I had a thought. What if dark matter is like water? We cannot see it because it is transparent, but its motion affects galaxies, causing them to swirl and be pulled toward the great plug hole of the universe. Carry on. Story 72. It's expanding beyond the environment. There is nothing out there. Only sea, birds, and fish. Story 73. It is not expanding into space. It is creating more space. Story 74. The human hubris of declaring that one knows exactly how to answer a question with the utmost certainty and does not care who you are or what you say screams hubris. Story 75. Is the theory that space periodically expands and contracts? Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.